Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. First off, I need to address my last post here. Looking at other stories on Reddit, I realize I messed up pretty badly. While it might not matter much in the grand scheme of Reddit, I want to apologize for that mistake. Actually, my girlfriend Sarah reminded me of this story today, which I think makes for a much better tale. Backstory. Sarah had just moved into a new apartment closer to both her sister and me in early 2023. She needed internet set up right away. While she's not a tech wizard, she knows enough to be careful. During her call with the internet provider, she specifically asked, should I be worried about basic security issues like default passwords? The customer service rep assured her, no need to worry, ma'am. Everything's secure right out of the box. No default passwords here. Just press the WPS button to connect your laptop and you're good to go. The incident. Around 6 months later, Sarah started noticing her internet getting slower and slower. This became really obvious during her weekly video calls with her family in Japan. The video keeps freezing, she complained one evening. I can barely see mom and dad's faces. Sarah, being somewhat tech-savvy, knew it could be several things. Her laptop, worn-out network cables, or something else entirely. Before calling tech support, she wanted to check all possibilities, so she called me. I've worked in IT for over 15 years, mostly as a systems administrator, but also as an IT manager. Helping my girlfriend with tech issues? Right up my alley. Let me take a look, I told her when I came over. After some diagnostic work, I found the problem. Someone was stealing her Wi-Fi. Technically, the ISP hadn't lied about the default passwords. They'd changed that. Instead, they'd done something equally stupid. The Wi-Fi password was identical to the random network name SSID. Are you kidding me? I exclaimed, showing Sarah the router settings. This is barely better than having no password at all. I was furious. This wasn't just about someone stealing internet. These freeloaders could potentially access any shared files or connected devices on her network. Sarah understood the basics of network security, but this still made me angry. The revenge. Sarah, I said, how about we replace this router with something better? I've got the same professional-grade XyXL router at home. We could set up a secure VPN between our places, get private VoIP calling, the works. She agreed, and we split the cost of a new high-end router. But before replacing the old one, I decided to use its built-in features for some payback. I enabled Wi-Fi logging and plugged in a large USB drive to track our unwanted guests. Once the new router arrived, I got to work. First, I set up Sarah with a hidden, secure network. Then came the fun part. I created a second network identical to the old one, but throttled the speed. Using the logs, I could see which websites our guests frequently visited. I set up custom DNS overrides. For example, their favorite banking website now redirected to an explicit adult website. Their online shopping sites went to relationship counseling pages with titles like Signs Your Partner is Cheating. The router's newer firmware even allowed random redirects. Sometimes they'd get their intended website, sometimes they'd get something shocking or disturbing. Isn't this a bit mean? Sarah asked when I explained my plan. Maybe, I replied, but they shouldn't be stealing our Wi-Fi. Chet, the aftermath. A few weeks later, Sarah came home to find a moving truck outside. The neighbors 2 doors down were leaving. Her next-door neighbor filled her in the next day. You wouldn't believe the fighting, the neighbor told her. They were screaming about weird websites showing up on their computers. One accused the other of looking at inappropriate content, the other claimed someone was hacking them. It was quite the show. Apparently, the couple split up over the incident. Do I feel bad? Not really. We've since removed the trap network, and Sarah's internet works perfectly now. As a 3D artist, she especially appreciates being able to back up her work securely to my NAS. Remember, folks, when you steal someone's Wi-Fi, you're putting yourself at their mercy. I just showed some creative mercy. The next one is an entitled people story. I never imagined I'd end up in a legal battle with my homeowners association president over something as outrageous as him building his dream house on my land, but life has a way of throwing unexpected curveballs. This whole mess started about 2 years ago when I inherited a beautiful 5-acre wooded lot from my grandfather just outside of Portland, Oregon. The property was part of an upscale development called Pine Valley Estates, where my grandfather had lived since the 1970s. He was actually one of the original homeowners before the Homeowners Association was even established. The lot I inherited was separate from his main house. He'd bought it as an investment years ago and never developed it. When I first got the property, I wasn't in any rush to build. I had a comfortable home already and figured I'd wait until property values increased even more before deciding whether to build or sell. The lot was worth about $400,000 according to recent appraisals, given its prime location and the high-end homes in the area. Enter Marcus Thompson, our homeowners association president. I'd had limited interactions with him before this, but he had a reputation for being aggressive about enforcing homeowners association rules and throwing his weight around. He owned one of the largest homes in the development and clearly saw himself as the king of his little domain. One day in early 2022, I drove by my lot and noticed survey stakes and marking flags all over it. Confused, I parked and walked around, finding construction equipment already staged at the edge of the property. I immediately called the Homeowners Association office to find out what was going on. "Oh yes, that lot was approved for development last month," the receptionist told me cheerfully. "Mr. Thompson submitted all the required paperwork and architectural plans. Construction is scheduled to begin next week." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. There must be some mistake. That's my lot. I inherited it from my grandfather, Charles Miller. I never submitted or approved any construction plans. There was a long pause. Let me transfer you to Mr. Thompson." Marcus came on the line, his voice dripping with condescension. "Ah, yes, about that lot. The Homeowners Association records showed it as abandoned property since your grandfather's death. As president, I have authority to repurpose abandoned lots for development. Nothing personal, just business." "That's absolutely false," I shot back. "I have the deed and all documentation showing I'm the legal owner." "You can't just take my property," he chuckled. "Look, I've already invested over $100,000 in architectural plans and site preparation. The Homeowners Association Board has approved everything. If you want to file a complaint, you're welcome to bring it up at next month's meeting, but construction starts Monday." I hung up and immediately called my cousin Sarah, who happened to be a real estate attorney. She was as outraged as I was and agreed to take my case. We spent the weekend gathering all the property documents, deed records, tax payments, and other proof of ownership. Monday morning, we showed up at the construction site with a court order halting any work. Marcus was there supervising the start of excavation and turned an interesting shade of purple when we served him the papers. "This is ridiculous," he spluttered. "The Homeowners Association has full authority here. You can't stop this project." "Actually, we can, and we are," Sarah replied calmly. "My client has clear title to this property. Any construction without his permission constitutes trespassing and illegal development. Remove your equipment immediately or face additional legal consequences." He stormed off, but the equipment stayed. So we called the police to enforce the court order. Watching the officers make the construction crews pack up while Marcus paced and made angry phone calls was oddly satisfying, but that was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Marcus tried every trick in the book to circumvent the stop work order. He called an emergency homeowners association meeting to try to vote on eminent domain to seize my lot, which they had no authority to do. He filed complaints claiming my undeveloped lot violated homeowners association landscaping requirements. He even tried to claim adverse possession, saying the homeowners association had maintained the lot for years. They hadn't. Sarah methodically shot down every attempt. She filed for an injunction preventing the homeowners association from taking any action regarding my property without court approval. She documented every instance of Marcus trespassing or harassing me about the situation, and she started digging into the Homeowners Association's records and Marcus's conduct as president. What she found was shocking. Marcus had apparently been pulling similar stunts for years, using his position to bully and intimidate other homeowners. He'd modified Homeowners Association records to suit his purposes, selectively enforced rules against people he didn't like, and even used Homeowners Association funds for personal expenses. "This is way bigger than just your lot," Sarah told me. "We need to go after him for fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. Are you willing to be the one who finally stands up to him?" I thought about my grandfather, who had always taught me to fight for what was right. "Absolutely. Let's take him down." We filed a massive civil lawsuit against both Marcus personally and the Homeowners Association for attempted theft of property through fraudulent means, trespassing and unauthorized construction, abuse of Homeowners Association authority, financial fraud and misappropriation of Homeowners Association funds, harassment and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The evidence was overwhelming. Sarah had documented everything meticulously, including property records showing my clear ownership, fraudulent documents Marcus had submitted claiming the lot was abandoned, bank records showing his misuse of Homeowners Association funds, testimony from other homeowners about his pattern of abuse, emails and recordings of his threats and harassment. When the case went to court, Marcus's arrogance finally caught up with him. He tried to blame everything on clerical errors and misunderstandings, but the judge wasn't buying it. His own testimony was full of contradictions and outright lies. The verdict was everything we'd hoped for. The court confirmed my full ownership of the property, ordered Marcus to pay all my legal fees, over $50,000, required him to personally reimburse the Homeowners Association for misappropriated funds, banned him from serving on any Homeowners Association board, imposed significant punitive damages. But the best part? The publicity from the case led to a criminal investigation into Marcus's financial dealings. Turns out he'd been embezzling Homeowners Association funds for years through fake maintenance contracts and inflated expenses. He's now facing criminal charges for fraud and theft. The aftermath has been fascinating to watch. The Homeowners Association Board was completely restructured with new leadership and proper oversight procedures. Several other homeowners have come forward with similar stories of Marcus's abuse of power, leading to additional lawsuits. His reputation in the community is completely destroyed. As for Marcus's grand plans for his luxury dream home, the partially excavated site on my lot had to be restored to its original condition at his expense. Every time I drive by, I can't help but smile at the fresh grass growing where his massive ego project was supposed to be. The story could have ended there, but there was one more satisfying twist to come. About 6 months after the court verdict, I received an unexpected visit from Marcus's wife, Patricia. She looked uncomfortable standing on my doorstep. "I wanted to apologize personally for everything Marcus put you through," she said. "I had no idea how bad things had gotten until the criminal investigation started. I've filed for divorce." It turned out that Marcus had mortgaged their existing home to the hilt to fund his illegal construction project on my lot, all without telling her. When everything fell apart, they were left facing massive debts on top of the legal judgments and criminal penalties. "The irony is we didn't even need a bigger house," Patricia confided. "It was all about Marcus showing off, proving he was the biggest success in Pine Valley Estates. His ego destroyed everything we built together." I actually felt a bit sorry for her. She'd been betrayed as much as anyone else by Marcus's schemes. When she mentioned they were selling their house to pay debts, I put her in touch with my cousin Sarah to make sure her interests were protected in the divorce. The criminal case against Marcus concluded last month. He ended up pleading guilty to multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement. The judge sentenced him to 18 months in prison plus restitution of over $300,000 to the Homeowners Association and various victims of his schemes. The day Marcus reported to prison, I received a group text from several neighbors. "Ding dong, the witch is dead." Apparently, they'd organized an impromptu block party to celebrate. I had to laugh at how quickly the mighty had fallen. As for my lot, I've decided to build after all. But nothing like Marcus's ostentatious plans. I'm working with an architect on designs for a modest but beautiful home that fits naturally into the wooded setting. The new Homeowners Association Board has been completely cooperative in approving my plans. The whole experience taught me some valuable lessons about standing up to bullies and the importance of documenting everything. Sarah says my case has become required reading in her law firm for new attorneys handling Homeowners Association disputes. She even gets calls from lawyers in other states asking for advice on similar cases. The new Homeowners Association president, a retired judge who's determined to run things properly, asked me to serve on the board's ethics committee. I accepted, figuring my experience gives me a unique perspective on preventing abuse of power. We've implemented strict new policies about conflicts of interest and financial oversight. One of our first actions was to create an independent review process for any Homeowners Association enforcement actions, so no single person can ever again use the rules as a weapon against homeowners. We also established a mediation system for disputes, though thankfully it hasn't been needed much since Marcus's departure. The community has really come together in positive ways since all this happened. People are no longer afraid to speak up at Homeowners Association meetings or challenge questionable decisions. There's a new spirit of transparency and cooperation that makes Pine Valley Estates feel like the neighborhood it was always meant to be. Last week, I ran into Marcus's former construction contractor at the local hardware store. He shook his head and laughed about the whole situation. "You know what the craziest part was?" he told me. "Marcus was so convinced he was untouchable, he didn't even bother checking property records before hiring us. Who starts a $1 million construction project without verifying they own the land? That's just nuts." Indeed it was, but his overconfidence and arrogance led to his downfall, and our community is much better off for it. Sometimes justice takes time, but it's sweet when it finally arrives. I still have all the legal documents framed in my home office as a reminder that standing up for what's right is always worth it, even when facing seemingly powerful opponents. And every time I look out at my beautiful wooded lot, now safely protected from illegal development, I think about how proud my grandfather would be that I defended his legacy. The whole saga has become something of a legend in local real estate circles. I've even heard that some homeowners association training programs use it as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of proper oversight. If my story helps prevent other homeowners from facing similar abuse, then some good has come from all the stress and struggle. Update: 6 months later. A lot has happened since my last post, and I wanted to share some major developments that brought even more satisfaction to this whole situation. First, Marcus's criminal case took an unexpected turn. While serving his 18-month sentence, investigators discovered he'd been running similar scams in 2 other homeowners association communities where he previously lived. The prosecutor used this evidence of pattern and practice to add charges, extending his sentence by another 24 months. He won't be enjoying his power trips for quite a while. But the real bombshell came during the forensic audit of the Homeowners Association's finances. Remember those fake maintenance contracts I mentioned? Turns out Marcus had set up shell companies to funnel Homeowners Association funds through, and he wasn't working alone. The vice president of our Homeowners Association board, Tom Wilson, was his silent partner in the scheme. They'd been splitting the proceeds for years. When the evidence came to light, Tom tried to claim he was just an innocent dupe who signed whatever Marcus put in front of him. But Sarah, my cousin attorney, had already gathered emails showing Tom was actively involved in creating fake invoices and shuffling money between accounts. He ended up facing criminal charges too. The investigation revealed they'd stolen over $800,000 from our homeowners association over 5 years. No wonder our maintenance fees kept going up while basic repairs weren't getting done. Tom took a plea deal and is now serving 12 months plus paying major restitution. Speaking of restitution, here's where karma really kicked in. Remember that $100,000 Marcus claimed he'd spent on architectural plans and site prep for my lot? The invoices were all inflated or completely fake. He'd actually spent less than $30,000, but was planning to pocket the difference from homeowners association funds once construction started. The court ordered him to repay every penny plus interest and penalties. His wife, Patricia's divorce attorney, recommended by Sarah, made sure those obligations couldn't be discharged in bankruptcy. Marcus will be paying us back for years after he gets out of prison. Patricia, by the way, has really turned her life around. Once she realized the extent of Marcus's crimes, she cooperated fully with investigators. She provided crucial evidence about his financial dealings and helped recover significant assets he'd tried to hide. The judge took this into account during asset division in their divorce. She sold their oversized house, which, as I mentioned, Marcus had secretly mortgaged, and bought a nice modest condo. She's gone back to work as an accountant and seems much happier without Marcus controlling her life. We actually have coffee together sometimes now. Turns out she's a lovely person once she got out from under his influence. The changes in our homeowners association have been dramatic. The new board, led by that retired judge I mentioned, implemented a complete overhaul of our financial systems. Some key changes. Annual independent audits are now required. All contracts over $5,000 need multiple bids and board review. Financial records are available to any homeowner who wants to see them. Board members must disclose any business relationships with contractors. Term limits prevent anyone from accumulating too much power. We also revised our architectural review process to prevent anything like what Marcus tried to pull with my lot. All property ownership must be verified through county records before any construction can be approved. Multiple board members have to sign off on major projects, and homeowners can appeal any decision to an independent committee. The most satisfying part? Our homeowners association fees actually went down this year. Once we stopped paying inflated prices to Marcus and Tom's fake companies, we had plenty of money for proper maintenance and even some community improvements. We used some of the recovered funds to build a new playground and community garden. The garden plots are especially popular. There's already a waiting list for next season. It's brought neighbors together in a way that never happened under Marcus's reign of intimidation. As for my lot, construction on my new home is nearly finished. I went with a beautiful craftsman-style design that preserves most of the mature trees. The new architectural review board actually used my plans as an example of environmentally sensitive development for other homeowners to consider. Several neighbors have told me they're glad I fought back against Marcus instead of giving in or selling the lot to avoid conflict. It gave others the courage to come forward about his abusive behavior and financial crimes. One elderly resident admitted she'd been afraid to report Marcus stealing her homeowners association dues payments. He'd pocket the checks and claim they were lost in the mail, but now she's getting restitution too. The criminal investigation also uncovered some interesting connections. Remember that construction contractor I mentioned meeting at the hardware store? Turns out he'd worked with Marcus before and knew something was fishy about the project on my lot. He kept detailed records of their conversations and Marcus's instructions to inflate invoices, which he turned over to investigators once the case broke open. I needed the work at the time, he explained, but I documented everything because something felt wrong about the whole deal. When you stopped the project, I was actually relieved. His evidence helped prove Marcus's intent to defraud both me and the homeowners association. The contractor's honesty and cooperation meant he avoided any criminal charges himself, though he did have to repay some inflated payments he'd received for other homeowners association projects. Sarah's law firm has been kept busy handling similar cases across the state. Apparently, our situation exposed a pattern of homeowners association presidents abusing their authority for personal gain. Several other communities have now hired forensic auditors to review their books, and some shocking cases of embezzlement have come to light. The state legislature is even considering a bill to require more oversight of homeowners association finances and limit their power to seize property. Sarah testified at a committee hearing about my case as an example of why reform is needed. The bill looks likely to pass next session. Marcus tried to appeal his conviction, claiming he had ineffective counsel. He fired 3 different lawyers during the proceedings. The appeals court rejected his arguments completely. The judge's opinion specifically cited his attempt to steal my lot as evidence of his pattern of fraudulent conduct and abuse of authority. His former cronies on the old homeowners association board have all resigned in disgrace. Most claim they were too trusting and didn't know what Marcus was really doing. Maybe some of them were genuinely fooled, but others had to know something was wrong. They just didn't want to risk losing their special treatment and waived fees that Marcus provided in exchange for their compliance. The whole experience has made me much more involved in local governance. I've joined the County Planning Commission as a citizen member, where I can help prevent abuse of property rights on a larger scale. Several other homeowners association boards have asked me to consult on improving their oversight procedures. My grandfather would definitely be proud, not just that I protected his legacy, but that I helped create positive change in the community he loved. The lot he left me turned out to be worth far more than its monetary value. It became the catalyst for exposing corruption and bringing neighbors together to build something better. Last week, we had a community picnic in the new garden area, looking around at families enjoying themselves, children playing freely, and neighbors chatting without fear of Marcus's spies reporting their every move. I felt incredibly grateful that I didn't back down when he tried to steal my land. Patricia summed it up perfectly over coffee recently. Marcus thought he was building his dream house, but he actually built his own prison instead. Sometimes karma needs a little help from people willing to stand up to bullies. I couldn't have said it better myself. The next one is a malicious compliances story. I worked for a small e-com company that had an odd dynamic between the CEO and the head of tech. There was a messy divorce between the two, and the CEO and CTO, and the CEO hired a new director of tech who hired another guy as his head of BI and DE. Initially, they seemed fine, and they talked about all their plans about how they were going to fix all the old code that did make the systems and websites slow and potentially crash, but as time went on, we all learned that these guys were literally just talk. They couldn't deliver anything they promised, were very arrogant, and took to taking 2-3-hour lunches at the bar and getting drunk. But because they kissed the CEO's ass and because he hated the old CTO, he kept forgiving them, in spite of frequent protesting from the other teams in the company. One day, everything seemed to go awful. I lead the DS analytics team at that time and had a report that pulled in internal stats as well as API calls to Google and Adobe. Our live reporting showed that our conversion rate had fallen off, and a quick check with the members of tech that were old hires of the old CTO and very reactive and competent confirmed that the website had suddenly gone down around 9:30 a.m. We called director and the BI guy, but nobody could get a hold of them. They rolled into work much later after the issue had been resolved. Everyone was pissed we could reach them, but they claimed to just be heroes that quickly handled the issue, which they stated definitively was a DDoS attack that they eventually managed to thwart. But soon the other tech guys that were there shared data that showed certain metrics were not acting consistently with a DDoS attack. After some pressure, we learned the head of BI was taking some randos through a tour of the off-site servers, saw a loose cable on the ground, picked it up, and just plugged it into some slot, which created a feedback loop or something that crashed the site. They had then gone to the bar, and when they noticed the calls, they raced back, unplugged the cable, and then rebooted the servers, causing everything to work again. They got ripped to shreds for their awful behavior. Even the CEO piled on. The two jackasses never fully admitted this was the cause, claiming that it was a DDoS attack and a coincidental and exactly timed feedback on the servers. This is when they got petty. Claiming security was bad, they removed everyone's ability download/upgrade/call any API without them signing off on literally everything. They hoped this would punish us all, and initially we were really upset, but the CEO was back to supporting their shenanigans. That's when inspiration hit. Everyone impacted tried to do as any new downloads and updates we could possibly do. In particular, my team, using primarily R and Python at the time, began to require checks to upgrade every library in our codebase, and created several scripts that had no real purpose other than to load lots of libraries, hit APIs, and make plots. These tech guys didn't know how to read either language, and while they suspected shenanigans, they couldn't prove it. It got so bad they would have to spend hours every morning with our team approaching every check with a password entry. The best came when they went into our code that was functional and commented out all API calls. The scripts failed to run, and an important automated report couldn't be updated, leading to the CEO being unable to update his presentation for the board. We showed him the commit that the BI guy had made and what he had done without consulting us. The CEO screamed at the guy for 40 minutes and was threatening to fire the guy. The arrogant jerk was reduced to tears and was crying and begging to keep his job. They immediately announced a new security patch and let us all download everything. I got a new gig shortly after, but found out the two eventually were fired for incompetence and being drunk on the job. One of the awesome original tech guys is now running everything, and as near as I know, there haven't been any major problems since. The next one is an entitled People's Story. For reference, my family is a tight-knit, good-loving Christian family. However, I am feeling betrayed, due to my younger brother abusing my parents' kindness. He gets anything he wants pretty much, while I have to work my butt off. I saved up for 5 years to buy a lawnmower to earn more money and bought my very own VR headset for $300 a year later. However, my parents manipulated me into letting my brother use it, and then he broke it. I was devastated beyond belief. I told my parents that he needed to pay for it. They initially agreed, but instead just let him off with a talking to, and my parents bought me a new one. To add salt to the wound, they bought him a better headset with guards and extra battery for $800 for his birthday, while I was always told anything above $100 would have to be my own money. I fixed up a computer I bought over the course of a year, and my parents got my brother a brand new PC for nearly $1,000 spontaneously a few weeks later. I buy a phone. My brother gets a phone with unlimited data and arcade subscription. I pay for a $60 WoW subscription. My brother gets it for free and never uses it. I buy a game. He gets the same game for free. I got a new monitor. He gets a new monitor for free. It might not be so bad if it weren't for the fact that he also does no housework. My parents help some, but a lot gets pushed to me that my brother's supposed to do. My brother got a dog, which I'm allergic to, and my parents justified it because they gave me a beat-up old Ford Ranger that still doesn't work a year later. I had to get an allergy test, which put me out of school for 2 weeks. I now had to make up tons of schoolwork, keep up with Invisalign, do most of the indoor and outdoor chores, but my parents still complain I'm in my room too much. This is despite the fact that my brother was failing 3 classes with 0% S for months, and he gets to stay in his room on his VR all day. I get sick often due to crap immune system. The only way I'm allowed to stay home is if I throw up or am in severe pain. He gets to stay home if he has a runny nose. I had to drop BSA due to stress, and replaced it with more JROTC, and my parents let him quit BSA with nothing replacing it. He also was allowed to quit Bible study on Wednesdays too. He throws a toddler-like tantrum of stomping around, yelling, crying, and slamming doors when he is told to do anything other than what he wants to. My parents justify this bullcrap by saying they're preparing me to be tougher in the real world. I try to respect their wishes and have never even talked back, let alone argue. However, I've had the last straw today as I am being told I have to move my PC out of my clean room into the allergy-infested basement where it was originally until my brother got a dog. They say it's so they can monitor my screen time while I can hear my brother in his room still on his VR. As an introvert, my last bastion of solitude is just some models and books in a small room since my phone isn't allowed in here, but it is in my brother's room. I'm at a complete loss as of what to do. My parents aren't classic abusive idiots, but fairly reasonable people except when it comes to my brother. Words have more of an effect on me than they do on him, but my brother just gets angry and storms off. I'm fairly certain my parents believe my introverted nature is something that needs to be fixed, rather than adapted to. My brother is a party-loving jokester like my parents that I'm guessing is what my parents believe I should be. My parents treat me like a disappointment, trying to eke more out of me so I can be better in their own eyes. I never get my way, just some sort of compromise between what I want and what they want. Like I said earlier, my computer returns to the basement today. My brother still gets to keep his stuff in his room, and off to the curb I go. I might post about my introvert issues elsewhere on here, but for now I don't know what to do. The next one is an entitled parent's story. My dad used to be more considerate and actually cared how his actions affected others. I'm slightly autistic, if that means anything, and 4 years ago we lost my mom to lung cancer. It was horrible, but instead of being there for me and my twin brother, my dad turned to drinking, pounding it as much as he could without going broke. He was drunk as often as possible, always going on about how he hated his job and how she should still be here. I came home from work every day just to take care of him, to the point where I never even got time to grieve my mom. A few months after she died, he told us he'd spent my mom's entire inheritance, around £70K. Some went to his new teeth, some to help my brother buy a car, and the rest he blew on scam-bot hookup sites. I was so burnt out I couldn't even be angry. He started smoking again, which made me angrier because that's what killed Mom. To distract him, I put him on Tinder just to stop him wasting more money on scams. He met a woman there, but it turned into a weird, not quite dating but friends deal after he got so drunk he fell, hit his head, and ended up in the hospital. He had to stay off work, but because he'd already used up so much time being drunk, he wasn't getting paid. It all fell on me to keep the house running. After that, he blamed any forgetfulness or confusion on that fall. The only reason he even tried to clean up his act was because his not-so-girlfriend threatened to stop talking to him. One night he nearly fell through the banister, and I screamed at him while he sobbed about how he missed Mom. I moved out to my nan's for a few weeks, hoping he'd finally stop drinking. It only semi-worked. He hasn't stopped, but at least he doesn't get drunk anymore. He switched from cigarettes to vapes to try and quit. The house is still a mess. I clean it whenever I can, but I'll come home on Monday to plates left on the table and a kitchen full of unwashed pans. He works night shifts 3 days a week, and the rest of his time is either spent sleeping, sitting at his computer, or visiting his not-so-girlfriend. When the mess gets too bad, he stomps around, blaming me for not helping him. Then he calms down and apologizes. We have a dog he doesn't take care of. He doesn't pick up the dog's mess in the garden, doesn't walk him, and complains about the dog needing to go out. The dog jumps up at the table during meals, chews on clothes, and only stops when we bribe him with treats. My dad leaves empty bottles and cans all over his desk and bottle caps everywhere. Half the time the dog grabs them, and only then will he throw one away. There are mountains of unwashed clothes in my dad's room. He won't wash them unless I urge him to. Every time he gets down, he blames my mom, saying it's her fault for leaving us too soon. He tells us the only reason he's still here is because of us, and that he would have killed himself otherwise. He always says, "I'll be happy when I'm gone because I'll be back with Mom." He owes me over £1,500, and every time he pays me a little back, he has another excuse to need the money. When I try to talk to him seriously, he interrupts me, talks to the dog, or makes silly faces to distract me. When I get frustrated, he accuses me of playing up and overreacting. But if he wants to talk seriously, he demands I give him my full attention. At night, he cranks up his music and blasts it so loud on his Bluetooth speaker that the neighbors can hear it. When I complain, he either says, "Then move, it's my house," or "It makes me happy." Don't you want me to be happy? I'm so tired. My head constantly hurts. I love him. He's my dad, but I hate the way he acts like he's the only one grieving, like I'm the problem for trying to help him. I don't want to lose him, but I can't keep doing this. I just want him to stop. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.